So in this program, we're asking them to enter a whole number. And we're reading in using console.readLine, which means we're going to have a string. Okay, and so what we need to do is convert this to an integer. And here we're using int.TryParse as part of an if statement. Okay, so here is the TryParse statement. And int.TryParse is what we're converting it to. Our string is input. If it can do the conversion, we want it to save the integer as converted number. And so how this works inside an if statement, it's basically if it was able to convert the input into an integer and store it as converted number, if that is true, if that worked, then execute this. Okay, and if that didn't work, if there was a problem, then come down here and execute this. And if it couldn't do the conversion, that really means that the value they entered was not an integer. Okay, and so that's what we tell them. And if it can do the conversion, our new integer value is called converted number. And so here we say the original number is, we're writing out converted number, and then we multiply it by 10, and we say the original number multiplied by 10 is, and we show the new value. And the reason we're doing the multiplication is so that you can see that, yes, converted number is in fact an integer. We are able to do arithmetic on it and then print it out. Okay, and so here is a sample run. If we did not enter a whole number here, okay, then this is what it would display. Please enter a whole number. We typed in the word 21, and then it gives us the little error message here. Now, normally what would happen if we did not use TryParse, we would get an exception error. The program would stop running. You would go back into Visual Studio and you would see a little data exception box display. Okay, and this allows the program to continue running because if you enter bad input, it just displays an error message. Another example of a bad entry, because we told them to do a whole number, if they do a decimal number. And that is also considered to be bad input, okay? Because int.TryParse is not going to work because it is taking that input and trying to convert it to a whole number. And it sees that there's decimals, and that is the wrong type of data. So it's going to come down here and print that message out. Now, one technique that I actually like to use, because it not only will tell the user that they have entered invalid data, but it makes them type the data again. Basically, it forces them to type correct data. So here is kind of the same program, but instead of an if statement, we have a while statement. And so what it's trying to do is it's trying to take that input and convert it into an integer and store it in converted output. Okay, and if it cannot do that, so there's the not here. If it is not able to convert the input into an integer, it's going to stay in this loop. Okay, the value entered is not a whole, should be a whole number. Please try again, and we read it in again. And it will stay in this loop until they give you a valid whole number. Okay, and when we get the valid whole number, it is going to be stored in converted number. So we fall out of the loop, and then we've got the original number is, we multiply it by 10 so that you can see that, yes, it is actually a value that is an integer, and you can do arithmetic. And then we display the results. And so far, we've looked at TryParse with integer, but you can use TryParse with all sorts of different data types. So this example is using it with a double value. So here we've got double hours worked. Please enter your hours worked, and we're reading it in as a string. And then we've got this little error handling while loop where it's trying to convert it to double. If it can convert it to double, then it's going to save the value in hours worked. Okay, and if it cannot do the conversion, then we get this error message and we have them enter the value again. And it'll stay in this loop until it can actually make the conversion and store the new value. So by the time we get down here, we have the hours worked, and it is a legitimate double value. So we've got a similar thing for pay rate. We are declaring it. We tell them to enter your pay rate. We are inputting it as a string, and then we get into this little error handling while loop. And we're only going to go into the while loop if they cannot convert that input into a double value. If they can convert it, it'll get converted and stored in payout, and it'll be great. It'll go down to the next line and execute it. But if they can't make that conversion, that means the wrong kind of data was entered, and we tell them that, and we have them enter it again. Okay, so you only stay in this loop if they've entered bad data. If they have entered valid, legitimate data, then you fall out of the loop and execute the next line. And there is an example. And these TryParse methods are very effective error handling methods, because you will end up with the correct data.